Hello to all my dear followers. I'd like to welcome you to a new chapter of What if Naruto trains to become a Genjutsu master alongside Kurenai? At the top right of the screen, I've left a card with a playlist showing all the chapters of this fanfic in order. Please, I ask for your likes and comments so I can bring you more chapters. Without further ado, enjoy.
Within the elemental countries, there are a myriad of different countries. There are 5 major countires which control the majority of the land and shinobi forces. There are many different smaller countires which each control their own shinobi forces, but they pale in comparison to even half of a major country in most cases. Then there are the lands that have no shinobi and are run simply as their feudal lords wish while hiring out for ninja because their lands do not need constant protection. There is one thing that ties every shinobi village together. That is the system by which people from each village can learn of and hunt down rogue ninja from their own or opposing villages to claim the reward stated within the system. This system is known as the bingo book. Within a single bingo book, you will find the information one would need to track down and kill or capture their target. The information that is provided is only the information that their home village will have on the rogue ninja. So, if one would look at a rogue ninja of over 2 years ago, the information stated in the bingo book would most likely be outdated, unless a hunter ninja encountered the rogue ninja and managed to gain more information on said rogue ninja. Hunter ninja are the main users of the bingo book. They hunt down rogue ninja within the bingo book and destroy their own village's ninjas' bodies to keep the secrets of the villages within the village. For a ninja's body is a veritable wealth of knowledge for the experienced medic. However, for each country there are additions within the bingo book. These additions are not rogue ninja but ninja of interest, prestige, or of a certain level of skill which garners the attention of the country in whose bingo book they appear. These ninja do not appear in their home country's bingo book because they are on active duty upon the shinobi force and actively working for the village. For example, Uchiha Itachi, the famous mass murderer of his own clan, would appear in every country's bingo book for the reward that Konoha has upon his head, as opposed to Hatake Kakashi, who is a renowned ninja whom holds many titles and appears in every major country's bingo book except Konoha's. Each country updates their bingo book at different times. Though some countries overlap, such as the 5 major countries, all of whom update their bingo books monthly. These countries are constantly in flux with small-time desertions to deaths of shinobi within bingo books causing the need for such constant renewals. The smaller countries, on the other hand, might only update their bingo books once every 3 to 4 months. The bingo books also have 2 categories inside them. The first is the class of shinobi that your opponent has deemed you to be at. Much like mission ranks, these are assigned according to skill but also by rank. Should your rank be lower, one is less likely to be put higher in the rankings than normal because it would send a message of weakness to opponents and clients. The higher your rank, the more range that your opposing country has with your rank, as it would not seem unsightly to put a higher rank on a chunin than a genin. The ranks that can be given, starting from lowest to highest, are E rank. These are academy students that have fled their village. This rank is never used for those posted as a threat to an opposing country and are only hunted by novice hunter nin. D rank, these are the genin who have very little in their repertoire and little training. This rank is almost never used as a threat to an opposing country unless the genin has a particular skill that makes him/her someone to be wary of. C rank, this is the middling area and the rank used the most. Experienced genin to slightly experienced chunin are usually assigned this rank, and as such, this rank is broken into low C, mid C, and high C ranks to further distinguish the threat levels. B rank, something usually given to experienced chunin to low or special jounin ranks. This rank is one in which you had best be prepared and ready for a fight, as these people have the experience and power necessary to fight most opponents. A rank, one of the strongest ranks and handed out only when the leader of the country is in agreement to the person being this powerful. This is usually given to elite jounin level ninja and almost never awarded to anyone else. Finally, S rank, this rank is given out only to select few. As of now, there are only 20 S-rank ninja within the bingo books and all of them are extremely dangerous. These people are known to be able to wipe villages off the face of the elemental countries with their odd, strange, or powerful techniques and experiences. The second category is linked with the first. This category is the action to take category. The first and lowest action would be capture on sight. This is usually used with lower-ranked shinobi who are an asset to their village, such as someone with a bloodline or special information. This is much more dangerous than killing because of the nature of the attack and action one would have to set about to do it. This is the reason it is mainly used for lower-ranked ninja, as any ninja above B rank is exponentially harder to capture than kill. The second and most common would have to be kill on sight. This means that the country wants the person dead and ninjas act accordingly. Going along with these actions, however, there are warnings that can be issued. One such warning is never engage alone, something that is apt for someone like Kakashi with his Sharingan ability. Another is engage with caution, meaning this person may be more than they appear. There is one last warning/action that can be applied to a bingo book entry. Only one person has ever received this warning/action, and that man was the Yondaime Hokage, whom is the only bingo book entry that had a SS rank and a flee on sight order in IWA and Kumo's bingo books. Now, being inside the bingo book is a two-edged sword. On the one hand, you gain the prestige and honor of being acknowledged as dangerous by another country, thus sending a message out to potential clients as to your prowess and ability to complete missions, possibly gaining clients for your village. On the other, your enemies are no longer unprepared for you. Some of your data is available to the public and you have lost the element of surprise that a ninja who has avoided prestige will have. What Naruto didn't know is that his world was about to change all from his actions upon the bridge in Wave, which was witnessed by a scout, a person who is really a spy for their country but who is skilled in assessing the danger level of shinobi and observing their skills to gain information for their home countries. For Naruto, it was unfortunate that he met one of the best in the business right when he began his career. Scene break. Naruto and company had taken their time in returning from their mission, enjoying some relaxation after their unexpectedly difficult mission. They took a leisurely pace as they walked back to Konoha with a bit of pride from coming away of such an intense battle alive. Because of their pace, however, they ended up not being able to get back to Konoha in one day and were now approaching the gates in the early morning hours. As they traveled, Naruto noticed his teammates' behavior change. Sasuke quickly became more moody and depressed as he seemed to brood over the battle that had taken place. Naruto didn't even want to talk to the boy after the fight because of how hostile he had become, especially to Naruto. Sakura, on the other hand, seemed to have a newer, stronger determination that flared within her after seeing everything that Sasuke and Naruto had done. She hadn't had any of her regular outbursts of swooning over Sasuke, but she didn't seem much nicer to Naruto either. Personally, Naruto was starting to see how he could have liked her until they neared Konoha and her determination wavered as they drew closer to home, while she seemed to revert back to her old self slightly. Though her attitude towards training seemed strong, she was still apparently infatuated with Sasuke. All in all, Naruto still couldn't stand them any longer, and his impassive mask had started to be replaced, though emotions could now be seen through his eyes alone. Naruto spared a glance at Kakashi, and he just shook his head when he saw his sensei still reading his adult book. He knew that book was a perverted book seeing as his Gigi held the same book in his desk, but he didn't know what was in it beyond that. He wasn't pleased that his sensei read that book, much less that he read it in public and even while watching over his team. Naruto simply shook his head as they arrived on the path that would lead them into Konoha. The four shinobi walked together as they approached the gates of their home. The only difference in their stances as the longer strides Naruto began to take as he increased his steps leading back to his home, back to his friends and back to his sensei. He smiled happily as he reached the gates, his exuberance shining through as he turned to the gate guards as they asked, "Name and occupation?" Kakashi stepped forward, his nose still buried in his book. Genin Team 7, led by Hatake Kakashi, reporting back from their first C-rank mission. Kakashi stated before giggling perversely. The guards' sweat dropped as they looked at the jounin and waved them through. "Please go see Hokage-sama at once for mission report," they said and returned to their job as Team 7 walked through the gates and headed for the Hokage Tower. Naruto's smile quickly faded as the glares returned full force. He looked down slightly before a forced smile appeared on his face as he walked through the village, his feelings taking a blow with each person who glared at him. Scene break. As soon as they reached the Hokage Tower, they were ushered into the Hokage's office. The office was rather plain. On one side of the office held pictures of each of the Hokages, while the other had a huge symbol for the Land of Fire on it. There were chairs and a sofa for meetings, but there was a wooden desk, behind which sat a comfortable chair in which sat the Hokage himself as he stared down Team 7 with seriousness in his eyes. Behind him, the sunlight streamed in as panels of windows showcased a fantastic view of the city. "Put that book away, Kakashi, or you will find your entire stash burned," the Hokage said as the door closed, leaving the team alone with him. Kakashi's book disappeared so fast even Sasuke's Sharingan would have missed it. Kakashi's lone eye locked with the Hokage's as the Sandaime began to speak again. Now, do you wish to tell me why my ANBU found the demon brothers, Gozu and Meizu, tied up and ready for delivery when they answered your summons, Kakashi? Kakashi held a finger up to speak, but the Sandaime didn't pause long enough for him to. Or perhaps why you continued a mission that was obviously out of your team's capabilities instead of returning and gathering the necessary team, he said dangerously, while he looked at Kakashi with the glare of a man whom was once called the Kami no Shinobi. Kakashi sighed and looked down. The client tricked us, true, but his reason for doing so was inspiring, and I was a bit arrogant in thinking I could handle anything that came after the demon brothers. Kakashi started as he began to explain the entire mission to the Hokage. We departed from Konoha 30 minutes following our acceptance of the mission. We formed up in a diamond defense with Naruto taking point. Sakura and Sasuke took Tsunade's left and right respectively, while I took the rear. We had been traveling for a few hours when I noticed a puddle in the middle of the path, which I knew was a Genjutsu, because of the lack of rain and abundance of sun upon the path. The Hokage nodded, agreeing with his assessment while Naruto mentally scoffed again at never having the chance to take his anger at the demon brothers' lack of Genjutsu common sense. They attempted to kill me first, but I simply fooled them into thinking I was dead, as I wanted to see who they were after. The Sandaime's eyes narrowed. The two Chunin proceeded to attack Tsunade and my Genin team, but Sasuke dealt with them rather handily by first lodging their chain-linked gauntlets to a tree, and then protecting the bridge builder while Sakura attempted to do so. Kakashi avoided saying that Naruto had frozen up as Naruto's hands clenched at the bad timing of learning about his shadow clone's abilities. After that, I took the demon brothers down fast and asked Tsunade why he had lied about the mission. It seemed the shipping magnate Gatu had taken over the entirety of Wave's shipping industry, and the only thing standing in his way of complete control of the country was Tsunade's bridge. Kakashi explained as the Hokage's eyes widened slightly at the name. He pleaded for us to continue our mission even despite the great risk to our lives. I was arrogant and decided we should help them without sending for backup, Kakashi said as his head hung down slightly. We traveled on to Wave Country and were nearing Tsunade's home when we were attacked again, this time by an opponent I had not anticipated. The Devil of the Mist and member of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist, Momochi Zabuza. Again, the Hokage's eyes widened as Kakashi explained their fight. He called forth a dense fog with his hidden mist jutsu. I managed to trick him into thinking one of my clones was myself by having it speak. But right when Zabuza appeared inside the protection my team had set up, Naruto had already turned around and stabbed the man's clone. The Hokage's eyes shot to Naruto, whose face was almost emotionless, but a hint of pride broke through. After a short back and forth in which I destroyed 2 more clones, Zabuza managed to knock me into the water. Unexpectedly, he managed to capture me with his water prison jutsu. Luckily, Naruto managed to figure out a way to rescue me after destroying 2 more of Zabuza's clones. He and Sasuke managed to get Zabuza to release his jutsu, and I proceeded to battle him until a hunter ninja, whom we later found out was Zabuza's accomplice, appeared and took his body away after I had confirmed his death. He had been put into a death-like trance by his accomplice. My team carried my unconscious body to Tsunade's place because I had overexerted myself and we were offered loggings there. The Hokage's eyes were darting between Kakashi and Naruto. He seemed confused about how Naruto managed to kill 3 of Zabuza's clones. After I had realized Zabuza was still alive, I decided to teach them the chakra control exercise surface clinging. The Hokage's eyes bored a hole into the man's skull. He had the team for more than a month. They should have known that exercise already. Kakashi continued as if he didn't see the glare. To my surprise, Naruto had already mastered the exercise despite not having any teacher for it. Naruto's eyebrow twitched, which the Sandaime caught. Sakura had fairly good control, but her stamina was not good enough and Sasuke needed almost the whole week to do the exercise. Naruto watched the bridge builder for the week that I and Zabuza must have been out of commission. It took 7 days, but I had finally regained my full strength. Unfortunately, Naruto had overworked himself the night before, and I decided to allow him to sleep at the house for a rear guard purpose. He informed me that he had awoken to the screaming of Inari and Tsunade, the client's family, who was under attack attempting to be kidnapped in hopes of gaining leverage against the client. Naruto apprehended the two samurai, but they had escaped before we returned from the bridge, which Zabuza had attacked. The Hokage smiled at Naruto, who favored the Hokage with a slight grin before it was wiped off his face. The Hokage's smile widened slightly as he turned back to Kakashi with a twinkle in his eye while his face was set in seriousness. While this was happening, Sakura, Sasuke, Tsunade, and myself were all arriving at the bridge, only to see the workers knocked out and one of them muttered, "Monster," before passing out. We figured it was Zabuza and took our positions just as soon as the mist started to roll in. Zabuza attempted to surround us with clones, but Sasuke destroyed them before they became an issue, and Zabuza's accomplice seemed impressed as the person stepped forward, being introduced as Haku. Sasuke and Haku clashed for a bit, Sasuke eventually winning in speed, even though this ninja seemed capable of one-handed hand signs. The Hokage sat forward in his chair, curiosity burning in his eyes. The fight continued until this Haku pulled an ace out his bloodline, some ice released that allowed him to conjure mirrors, which increased his speed using the reflections of the mirrors. It was at this point that Zabuza blocked my attempt to help Sasuke, and I lost track of his fight right after Naruto appeared. Basically, however, Naruto and Sasuke attempted to fight this person and eventually unlocked Sasuke's Sharingan before the boy put Sasuke into a death-like trance, causing Naruto to activate a hidden seal which allowed him to defeat the boy. The Hokage's eyes locked with Naruto's, and Naruto shook his head slightly while Sasuke and Sakura had confused looks, wondering what the hell kind of seal Naruto had. I had fought Zabuza while this happened. He managed to wound me twice, once on my hand and again in my chest as I appeared to defend Tsunade from his strike. I then noticed Naruto's seal and knew I needed to finish the fight fast. So I summoned my Nindogs, who smelt out my blood on Zabuza's blades and held him down as I attempted to run him through with my Chidori. The Hokage looked back at Kakashi. I was not expecting Haku to appear in front of Zabuza and take the hit for himself, thereby saving Zabuza's life, while he also riddled my summoning scroll with Sunban, dispersing my summons. Zabuza recovered quickly and swung his blade at me, managing to knock myself and Haku's body directly onto Sakura and Tsunade, knocking the four of us out. The Hokage's eyes widened before turning to Naruto's with fear in them. Naruto simply stared back at his Gigi. According to Naruto's report after the fact, Gatu appeared shortly thereafter with hundreds of thugs. The fear in the Hokage's eyes grew. Zabuza stopped his fight with my team and asked Naruto for a kunai since he couldn't support his Zanbato. He rushed the thugs, scaring them all before killing Gatu and perishing himself. The Hokage was slightly surprised. The thugs, all of whom were angry that their meal ticket had been killed, was about to kill us and pillage the village when the citizens of Wave rose up and scared them off. We buried Zabuza and Haku in Wave before finishing protecting Tsunade while the bridge was rebuilt, and we are now here. Kakashi finished. The Hokage sighed and rubbed his eyes as he absorbed all of the information. A silence stretched from the team as they awaited the final judgment of their commanding officer. They shouldn't have continued the mission after seeing the difficulty of the mission rise so high. Technically, the Hokage could disband their team and put them on probation for as long as he saw fit. On the positive side, the team had completed their mission with no small amount of difficulty, with flying colors, and he even had a potential country with which to make a trading agreement, as Tsunade was now a prominent figure in the renewed Wave country. The Hokage sighed again as he looked up and interlaced his fingers as he sat forward, staring intently at the team before him. "It would seem a congratulations is in order," he said finally, breaking the tense silence, causing Sakura to let loose the breath she had been holding. Naruto simply nodded like he knew what his Gigi was going to do from the start. Sasuke grunted. For the first Genin team to complete a A-rank mission since the end of the Second Great Ninja War. You will all be paid for an A-rank mission under the circumstances in which you fought. This mission could not be classified anything beneath A rank. I expect written reports on my desk no later than 3 days from now. Also, you will have a week's paid vacation for the ordeal you have just gone through. The team was looking up at the prospect of being rewarded when the Sandaime began to speak again. However, when your vacation is over, you are all required to do a minimum of 20 D-rank missions, he said, causing the happy mood of the team to instantly plummet. Naruto spotted the smirk hidden on the Sandaime's face as he said, "Team 7 is dismissed, except you, Naruto-kun." Naruto's team members filed out of the office, leaving Naruto staring at a man he had very conflicting feelings about. Naruto heard the door shut and his mind flew through several images. Many of them the happy times he had spent with the Hokage, times eating at Ichiraku's, the sandame near his bedside when he awoke from those horrible mob attacks. As rare as they were, the grandfatherly smile he seemed to wear around only himself and Konohamaru. The others, the times he had asked about why the mobs attacked him in the same bed as before, when he had cried himself to sleep on his birthdays, no one around to celebrate it with him, when the sandame confessed to knowing about the Kyuubi, finally, the question that always burned him, who his parents' identities were, and the now familiar signal of the sandames lying through his slightly forced way of speech, when he answered he knew nothing about them. Naruto had spent much time on his leisurely walk thinking about his relationship with his Gigi. Undoubtedly, he did not trust his Gigi anymore. That was forever replaced with a tiny voice that whispered that whatever the sandame did or said probably had another meaning to it. He hated that he had been kept in the dark about his burden so long, and that he didn't even find out about it until a traitor of all people told him. He had a nagging feeling his Gigi would have never told him. Other than this lack of trust, however, Naruto still cared deeply for the man. He had been there in his loneliest times of his childhood when he had no one else to cling to. It left a bond that was precarious and that would take the finest of lines between a stable connection and an absolute break in relations. But in this relation, Naruto knew he shouldn't hold what the sandame had withheld against him. He must have a point in doing so, his mind reasoned. With that thought, Naruto had decided to bury the hurt he felt when he thought of his Gigi and simply try to talk with the man like he once did, even if their relation was tenuous at best. As Naruto remembered this decision, his emotionless face remained, but his eyes suddenly shone with a hint of happiness as he looked at his Gigi without the same hurt as before. "Hello, Gigi," Naruto said, warmth coloring his voice. The Hokage seemed surprised for the barest of moments before a big smile spread across his face, his visage seemingly dropping years as he stared warmly at his surrogate grandson. "Naruto-kun, it is good to see you unharmed," he responded. Naruto nodded his head as he asked, "What did you want to see me about?" The Hokage's smile dropped a bit at not having his usual enthusiastic response of telling the Hokage every little detail of his day. "I was wondering how you could have destroyed Zabuza's clones." Zabuza was a well-known jounin with skills surpassing many others. No genin should be able to take down even his clones, the Hokage said. Naruto's eyebrow raised. "Then why are you not also talking to Sasuke? He managed to destroy some of Zabuza's clones as well." Naruto countered. The Hokage sighed and fell in on himself. "Uchiha Sasuke has been tutored by many different people, Naruto. You have not," he said while not looking directly at Naruto. Naruto simply clenched his fists. "I am a censor. Surely Kakashi-sensei informed you of this, Hokage-sama," Naruto said, his voice no longer as warm as it had been moments ago, yet it still wasn't as cold as before he left on the wave mission. The Hokage shook his head. "I didn't know that. I also didn't know he hadn't taught you any chakra control techniques, Naruto," he said as he looked him in the eye. "How did you learn the chakra control techniques?" he asked. Naruto smirked a foxy grin. "It's amazing what a henge can do. Isn't it, Hokage-sama?" Naruto said, using the same excuse he had used against Kakashi. He did feel slightly odd about lying about Kurenai to the Hokage, but he didn't really want to explain it just yet. The Hokage chuckled slightly once he had realized how Naruto had gained access to the techniques. "Very well, Naruto. You may go. Just don't be such a stranger, please?" he asked his surrogate grandson. Naruto hesitated a few seconds before his eyes defrosted slightly and he nodded to his Gigi. "Goodbye, Gigi," he said before turning around and walking out of the office. Scene break. Naruto watched as the kids came running out of the academy, their bright new hitayatesh flashing in the sunlight as they ran to their families, smiles on their faces and those of their loved ones. Naruto watched as the one of the young adults that were to be tasked with the defense of the village latched onto what must have been his mother's midriff and yelled, "I did it! I did it! I'm a ninja now!" The mother smiled benevolently down at her child. "I knew you could do it," she said proudly as she leaned down and hugged him back. The two celebration, only one of many, as the entire group in front of the academy sounded with shouts of joy and acceptance. Naruto stood in a nearby alcove, shielded from most eyes as he stared with longing and adoration at the group of people. I will definitely become a ninja. Then I will become Hokage. Then people will have to respect me. He thought as he felt a pang of jealousy for the boy whom was wrapped in his mother's loving embrace. Hey, look! One kid cried out, pointing at Naruto's hiding spot. It's that troublemaker, he shouted, which caused almost everyone's eyes to turn and look at him. Naruto paled as he saw the angry stares coming from the adults while a few of the bigger new ninja stepped forward. You better stop causing so much trouble or we might have to stop you. After all, we are ninja, one of the group said pompously while looking down at him. Naruto seemed to shrink as an adult's voice came from the crowd. You're not welcome here, you little brat. The voice spat out with venom, almost grinding the word brat out as if they wanted to say something else. Go on. Get out of here. The voice called, and soon the whole group of people started to yell at him, catcalls and jeers being tossed easily at the young boy as he trembled in place, his eyes watering but no tears falling. Demon, a voice seemed to whisper, and Naruto's eyes widened as he suddenly turned tail, closed his eyes, and ran, not caring where he was headed. As Naruto ran, he could feel the gazes upon him, the hate, the anger, the sorrow, and even the slight pity some people looked at him with. He took it all in, every stare, every glare, every sidelong glance that was filled with such emotion no child should ever have to suffer. Suddenly the voices grew. Their stares were no longer enough to contain the rage these people felt. Murderer! One person said, and it became a mantra. Each person he passed hauntingly chanting the same word over and over. Murderer! 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 As Naruto ran, the chant got louder and louder with each step, until it almost seemed to be a deafening roar. Murderer! The final chant was sung, and suddenly, silence. There were no sounds, no glares, no stares, just pure and blissful silence unladen with the hate and sorrow that had been plaguing Naruto since he first started to run. Naruto's eyes slowly opened and they widened in disbelief as he looked up at the gates of Konoha, standing in all their majesty like great sentries, defensive posts that could stall even the most avid of attackers, and a sight that welcomed home many weary travelers. His eyes widened not for their majesty but for the horrible sight standing between the two massive gates, for there, standing in the middle of the path with the sunlight bearing down on them, stood the two samurai that Naruto had remembered he killed, the same clothes upon their backs as the day he pushed them into the waters of Wave Country. The only thing different was the opened wounds upon their throats where his kunai had slit their throats. Naruto stared, wide-eyed as the two opened their mouth and spoke as one. You murdered us. You killed us. They spoke, drawing Naruto's head to shake back and forth in denial. No! He shouted once before their dead eyes latched with his own. Murderer! They shouted, and Naruto was suddenly aware of a shadow behind himself. Somehow he knew it was not his own shadow, but the shadow of the beast which he held inside of him. Naruto turned with fear in his heart as he saw his shadow stretch and twist into the visage of a snarling fox with 9 tails, and noticed the villagers standing still in front of him. Demon! They all shouted, and Naruto screamed. Scene break. Naruto screamed as he launched himself up from his bed and sat there panting with sweat rolling down his body. The sheets flung away during his restless sleep as he pulled a hand up to his face and stared at his shaking fingers. His breaths were ragged and his chest heaved as he attempted to regain control of his breaths. It was that nightmare again. He thought to himself as he sighed dejectedly while getting out of bed and looking at the clock on his nightstand, which told him it was too early to be up, meaning sometime before 6 a.m. He cursed as he got out of bed and walked into his bathroom. Looking in the mirror, he noticed the bags and dark circles surrounding his eyes, signifying the lack of sleep he had been getting. Even with the need to only have to sleep something close to 4 hours, Naruto was slowly becoming sleep-deprived as these nightmares about his first kills had been plaguing him. He hadn't seen Kurenai in the 4 days since he had been back. As a result, he had no one to talk to as Shikamaru seemed to be unavailable as well. He almost went to Kakashi for advice, but the last time he had tried that, Kakashi had blown him off and not even bothered to put his book away while talking to him. Naruto was not inclined to talk with him about such delicate subjects as killing. He had submitted his report only 2 days after they had reported back. Not being able to sleep left him with much time on his hands, and he had finished it early. Within the report, he had put the whole truth, how he had killed the men and how he had actually subdued the mob of thugs. He hadn't actually lied to the Hokage since he hadn't been the one to give false information, but he didn't want Kakashi finding out about Kurenai's teaching him since he could cause all sorts of problems with it. The Hokage had a right to know, and Naruto had withheld nothing in his report, so the Hokage would know the truth of the situation. He only hoped Kakashi would not read the report. But Naruto did hold onto the hope that Kakashi would read the report, if only to show that he held an interest in what had happened and to make sure nothing was affecting his team that had not been discussed. Naruto knew he had lied to the man, but if he didn't care enough to try and find out the truth, then Naruto felt the man didn't deserve to know the truth. Despite the fact Naruto had misled him from the beginning of the mission, one of Kakashi's favorite sayings was, "Look underneath the underneath." And if Kakashi couldn't follow his own words, then he wasn't worthy of being a sensei anyways. So, Naruto was stuck. He had no one he could go talk to that would help alleviate his problem. Naruto sighed again before grabbing a quick healthy breakfast and hitting the training fields early in the hopes that he could train himself into a peaceful sleep that night. He arrived at his training grounds a little after 6. He assumed and began to furiously stretch before beginning to do his speed exercises, which all included increasing his overall speed and power, but also his explosive power, the power with which one can start off with when one puts on that initial burst of speed. Scene break. It must have been hours later when Naruto collapsed in a heap on the ground in his training clearing, the new heavier weights on his legs causing his exhaustion. He laid there, breathing hard as his stomach rumbled, signifying his need for food. He merely ignored his stomach as he laid there looking at the sky. "It would seem your hard work has improved since you left, Naruto." A woman's voice Naruto knew drifted to him from the clearing's edge as Naruto stiffened before reading the chakra signature. "Hello, Kurenai. I made it back alive," Naruto said with some humor in his voice as his body relaxed completely. Kurenai moved next to him and looked down at his face from her standpoint. "Yes, you did, but you seem to be killing yourself since your return," she said, concern coloring her voice as she looked at him. Naruto's eyes averted from her own as he simply turned his head to the side. He couldn't respond to that. His lack of sleep was slowly starting to affect him, and Kurenai's reappearance was a welcome reprieve to the dark thoughts he had been having. "Where were you?" Naruto asked with some concern in his voice. She looked at him sternly, a look that said she knew what he was trying to do before she answered. "My team got their own C-rank mission. We had to deliver a message to a village near Cha no Kuni, T country. It's almost 3 days' travel. It was successful," she responded, to which Naruto nodded. "Congratulations," Naruto said, to which Kurenai nodded. A tense silence filled the clearing as Kurenai stared at Naruto with scrutinizing eyes, and Naruto started to fidget. "What's wrong, Naruto?" Kurenai asked softly. Naruto froze momentarily as his eyes darted around before his eyes suddenly locked with her own, and she knew. Naruto had no idea how. No idea what had possessed her as she suddenly appeared next to him and wrapped him in a hug as she rubbed his back soothingly. "It's okay, Naruto. Tell me," she said, softly. Her voice had a hint of pleading in it that Naruto couldn't resist. Also, this was the first time he was being held close by a female that he could remember. So, the floodgates opened and his eyes watered while he mumbled into her breasts what had happened. "Our C-rank went horribly wrong. We ran into some demon brothers who tried to kill our client, but I froze because I got my memories from the Kage Bunshin that talked to you and Shika right then." Kurenai gasped, but Naruto continued oblivious to her actions. "Then we traveled to Wave and ran into Momochi Zabuza. I managed to kill his clones, but he got away after having almost beaten Kakashi-sensei." Kurenai had pushed him away slightly so she could look at his blue eyes. "The demon of the mist? That's Zabuza?" she asked incredulously. Naruto nodded and continued his story, still looking into her eyes. "Kakashi-sensei started to train us in the tree climbing exercise, but since I already knew it, I was set to guard Tsunade. Oh, I found out why I couldn't cast Genjutsu," he said enthusiastically, his sorrow having fled for a moment. "That's great," she exclaimed softly before continuing. "But we can talk about that later, Naruto. What happened?" she asked softly yet again. Naruto looked down. "I overworked myself the night before Zabuza returned and my team left me at the house to sleep it off. But I was awakened by screams from outside, Tsunade and Inari, our client's family." Naruto added, seeing Kurenai's confused look. "We're under attack and the 2 samurai attempted to take Tsunade-san before Inari, a little kid, attempted to rush the men to save his mother. Kurenai's eyes widened yet again. So, when they took their stances, I cast the Sakura illusion on them and made them think they had killed Inari as I sent Inari and Tsunade away for their safety. And then, Naruto trailed off as his voice choked up with tears and he looked down in shame. But Kurenai pulled him in closer, burying him into her breasts again. "You killed them?" she said softly. Naruto's moving head was the answer she got. "I slit their throats using Kage Bunshin, and then I watched as the life left their eyes, slowly growing dimmer and dimmer as their blood pumped from the wounds on their necks. I pushed them into the river after they were dead, but I pushed down the emotions since my team was in trouble," he said with a muffled voice. "I managed to get to the bridge in time to help Sasuke, but after the whole fight, I wound up in front of 250 thugs all intent on bearing down and killing myself, my team, and my client. I had no choice. I used one of my Genjutsu and managed to scare them all so much that a few walked off the bridge during the Genjutsu and they fled as soon as the villagers of Wave appeared behind me when I ran out of chakra," he admitted as he sobbed louder. "Now, every night, I can't help but hear the screams of the villagers as they call me a murderer," he said through his sobs, "as they call me a demon." He whispered and his body shook with vibrations from the intensity of his emotions. Kurenai stroked his hair with her hand as she rubbed his back with the other, allowing him to drench the front of her dress with his tears. When his sobs died down, she spoke. "You know what, Naruto? I don't see a demon," she said, causing Naruto to look up into her eyes. She smiled lightly. "I see a man who is killed for his country, for the survival of others, and for the betterment of another country. I see a ninja who was capable of killing his heart during battle, but yet still capable of being a man while not in it. You may be a murderer, Naruto, but you are no monster, of that your heart keeps you from being so. So long as you don't enjoy your kills, you shall remain a remarkable man and a fine ninja." She smiled at him, and Naruto felt his worries melt away under her words, guidance, and smile. No woman such as her would smile at a monster. So, Naruto smiled back at her and hugged her tightly again as he said, "Thank you, Kurenai." Kurenai simply nodded and stepped back, both of them carrying peaceful smiles before Naruto's face flushed red, and he turned around, squeaking out, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to look," he yelled. Kurenai cocked her head to the side before looking down and noticing her white dress was almost see-through. She blushed red but couldn't see any reason for being angry with him. So, she smiled at his back and did a quick jutsu that dried her clothes, something she had learned from a ninja clothes cleaner. "It's okay, Naruto. Please turn around," she said. Naruto hesitantly turned around, his hands over his own eyes as he faced her. She giggled lightly before stepping forward and bringing his hands down. "It's okay, see?" she said as she pointed to her own breasts. Naruto flushed again but nodded and looked back at her face. "Now, I think you should know that I already knew about your mission and I figured out you killed some people from another source from which I also assumed you managed to use Genjutsu somehow," she said, which caused Naruto to look at her incredulously. "How?" he asked, flabbergasted. She giggled at his look before reaching around into her pouch and beginning to draw something from it before an ANBU shined into the clearing and Naruto looked over at the ANBU with a burning look, though his eyes remained with a hint of mischief as he said, "Hello, Nico-chan. How have you been?" The ANBU chuckled behind her mask as her purple hair settled behind her from her shin. "I'm fine, Naruto-kun, but I think you deserve to know my actual name now," she said before removing her mask, showing a very beautiful heart-shaped face with twinkling black eyes while the rest of her was covered in normal ANBU gear. "Yuzuki Yugao? Naruto-kun, it is a pleasure to finally be able to meet you face to face." Naruto smiled back at her as he said, "The pleasure is all mine. I suppose Gigi wants to see me?" he said, which caused her to nod and him to sigh. "I really wanted to know how you found out Kurenai," he whined, which caused the two women to giggle at his expense. "Actually, the Hokage wishes to speak to Kurenai-chan too. So, we can all go together. I was about to go find Kurenai right after you," Yugao said while replacing her mask. Kurenai simply nodded and said, "Nice to see you too, Yugao-chan," she said with a bit of sarcasm in her voice. Yugao just seemed to stare in her direction. Naruto looked between the two women and figured they knew each other from before as he nodded to Yugao, and the three of them shined into the waiting room for the Hokage office. "Wait here," Yugao said and opened the door to the Hokage's office. But as soon as she did, the Sandame's voice rang out. I already know you're here, so come in. Drawing surprised looks from Kurenai and Yugao. Though you couldn't see it, Naruto and company simply filed into the office. All three of them noted how serious the Hokage looked. You are dismissed, Nico. Yugao bowed and disappeared in a shunshin. Now, Naruto-kun, do you know what the sentence is for lying to the Hokage about a mission report without proper reasoning is? He asked with anger behind his words. Naruto nodded, causing the Sandame to blink before Naruto began reciting something from the ninja rules. Lying to your supreme commander about details on mission reports can be considered treason and can lead up to death, Naruto said as he stared at his Hokage. Kurenai's eyes narrowed and she looked at the Hokage scrupulously. Sarutobi nodded. That's correct, Naruto-kun. So could you please tell me again why you lied to me about your mission in Wave Country? He asked dangerously. If your answer is not satisfactory, I will have to put you in jail, Naruto-kun. Please tell me you had a reason for this. Naruto simply blinked and his cold facade faded while he looked at the Hokage with a serious deadpan look. You didn't read my report, did you? He said. The Hokage blinked owlishly before shuffling through some files and picking up Naruto's report. Pointing at it, Naruto nodded. Yes, that one, he said. The Hokage shook his head. Okay, then I can tell you that I did not lie to you. I lied to Kakashi-sensei, Naruto stated as if it was the simplest thing in the world, causing Kurenai and Sarutobi to sweat drop and exchange a glance that Naruto missed. And why did you lie to Kakashi? Besides that, what does this report have to do with you lying to me? The Hokage demanded. Kurenai watched on, a small frown on her features. Naruto simply sighed. Because I never gave the mission report. Kakashi did. You never asked me to tell my story, and so I never did. However, everything that happened, even the stuff I lied to Kakashi-sensei about, is in that report, which you should have read since it is classified as an A-rank mission. Naruto responded, drawing a choked sound from Kurenai. An A-rank? She stated incredulously. You mean to tell me that you didn't have backup in Wave Naruto? She asked, to which Naruto shook his head. It's all in the mission report, he said as he looked at the Hokage. Even why I lied to Kakashi can be traced back to it. He took a sidelong glance at Kurenai, who caught it and spoke as the Hokage began to open the report. Hokage-sama, I have neglected to inform you of another student I have been tutoring, she said, causing the Hokage to look up and Naruto to look at her. I don't believe this would be the right time for this discussion, Kurenai-san. Perhaps when this matter with Naruto-kun has been settled, I will have time to talk with you about your unofficial student, the Hokage said as his eyes darted to Naruto. Kurenai shook her head. No, that is because the person is Naruto. I have been training him for the past month in various ways, but mainly in the art of Genjutsu, she confessed. He approached me after we had become acquaintances and told me of Kakashi's training habits which I have brought to your attention, Hokage-sama, she said, which caused the Hokage to nod as if remembering their conversation. When Naruto asked for my help in learning my own specialty, of which I am the only qualified jounin to teach, I could not refuse him. He taught himself the chakra control exercises through his friends, but I helped him with his speed and Genjutsu. He has already created his own Genjutsu with my own help. The Hokage's eyes widened as he looked over at Naruto with some astonishment in his eyes. I thought you would never be capable of utilizing Genjutsu because of your chakra capacity, Naruto-kun, but it seems you have proven me wrong. The Sandame chuckled. I guess this explains why you know of his capabilities and the reason why you were talking with him just before I sent Nico to gather you, he said as he looked at the two nod, though Naruto quickly narrowed his eyes. Perverted Gigi, he said. The Sandame blushed and Kurenai suddenly remembered what had happened before she glared at the Hokage while pushing an arm across her breasts. The Sandame quickly wiped away the drop of blood from his nose and said, Anyways, I assume you were there to ask him how he had managed to get into the bingo book? The Hokage asked. Kurenai nodded. Naruto cocked his head to the side in confusion. I'm in the bingo book? He asked curiously, having learned of it from the many mentions of previous ninjas' rankings. The two older ninja nodded before Kurenai pulled out what she had been reaching for before they were interrupted by Yugao. Here, page 310. she said before handing him a book with the symbol for Kumogakure on it. Naruto raised an eyebrow before opening the book and beginning to read the page, which had a picture of his ninja registration on it. Name: Uzumaki Naruto. Rank: Genin. Ninja registration: 012607. Threat level: high C rank. Warnings: engage with caution. Age 13. Height: 145.8 centimeters. Weight: 45 kilograms. Blood type: B. Uzumaki-san is considered to be a genius of Genjutsu, known for taking out over 300 thugs with one Genjutsu alone within Wave Country. He is a hero to the people for his act. He is a master of stealth and capable of using the Genjutsu Kage Bunshin no Jutsu abundantly. Great caution is advised should you ever meet this budding Genjutsu master on the field of battle. His feints and abilities allowed him to injure the Devil of the Mist, Momochi Zabuza, before finishing him off after killing the thugs with his Genjutsu. Known alias: Konoha's Blade of Illusion. Bounties: $0. Naruto's jaw dropped as he read the bingo book description, during which Kurenai had discreetly pointed out where Naruto had lied to his sensei and shown the true parts of the report to the Hokage, since Naruto had read his entry a few times before he actually shouted, "What the hell? I didn't kill Zabuza." The Hokage and Kurenai grew grim. "Unfortunately, we cannot dispute that since you were credited with his bounty. Something I forgot to mention to you when your team left. Your checks are waiting in the lobby by the same place you pick up your stipend," the Hokage said. Naruto sighed and nodded. "Well, at least my name sounds cool, right?" he asked excitedly, causing the Hokage and Kurenai to chuckle. "Yes, I must say, Konoha's Blade of Illusion certainly has a more dangerous sound than Konoha's Genjutsu Mistress," Kurenai said as she smiled at Naruto. Naruto smiled back and the Hokage sighed. "I cannot punish you for lying to me since you were right, and I understand you not telling Kakashi-kun the truth since you obviously want to keep this teaching situation with Kurenai under wraps. I will allow this to slide this time, Naruto-kun." Naruto smiled at his GG. "However, should you lie to me or Kakashi again, then I will have to throw you in jail and suspend your license. As it is, you will have to do some more D-rank missions, but those will already be included in your vacation pay, so I decided to drop it," the Hokage said while Naruto nodded grimly. "Now then, since that is all cleared up, I would like for you to know, Naruto-kun, that your stipend checks, the ones that were issued during your mission, should be down with your mission payment along with Zabuza's bounty from Kirigakure. Please pick them up before they pile up too much in your box," he said as he smiled at Naruto. He was unprepared for Naruto to narrow his eyes at his GG. "You mean to tell me, if I didn't pick up my check on the day that it was issued and cashed it that same day, I should have still been able to receive those checks?" Kurenai's own eyes narrowed at Naruto, as did the Hokage's. "Of course," he said. "Why do you ask?" Though he had a sinking feeling. Naruto cursed and began to flare a bit of chakra. "Damn old bats stealing my money. I had to go hungry 'cause they wouldn't give me the damn checks," he muttered. His earlier release of his pent-up sorrow had made him a bit emotional, it seemed. The Hokage froze Naruto in place with a fixed glare and some ki. "What did you just say?" he asked dangerously. Naruto gulped but answered anyways, knowing that he wasn't in trouble. That stare still scared him as he saw it each time he got a talking to by the Hokage. If I didn't pick up my check and cash it the same day, then the people in the tower wouldn't give it to me," he answered. The Hokage cursed. "NBU," he barked out, drawing Nico again. "Bring me Akemi-san from accounting." Nico bowed and disappeared as a tense silence engulfed the room. Naruto shifted nervously for a few moments before Kurenai spoke again. "Naruto, could you explain how you managed to use Genjutsu? I never could figure that out," she said, to which the Hokage leaned forward, curious as well, while Naruto began to speak, explaining how he had figured out the 3 different chakra types he had and which one he needed to use for Genjutsu. Kurenai just let her jaw drop when she realized exactly how much chakra Naruto had at his disposal. Not to mention he had 3 different types to pull on. "That's amazing," she said. Naruto beamed in pride. "I think," Sarutobi began, "that you found a good solution for now, Naruto-kun, but you should really learn to channel that other blue chakra back into your body. It is much too wasteful for you to be dispersing it like that," he advised. Naruto nodded. "I thought the same thing. Unfortunately, that is beyond my control right now, so I will have to make do." he said, which caused the two older ninja to nod before Nico reappeared. Naruto-kun, Kurenai-san, I will not reveal this until you wish. However, please keep me informed of young Naruto's progress. I wish to help if I can, he said. Naruto and Kurenai nodded. Then you are dismissed. I need to figure out where Naruto-kun's money has disappeared to, he growled out, causing Akemi to whimper in Nico's grip. As they were about to leave, Kurenai spoke again. Hokage-sama? If I may, could I request a leave of absence for all rookie genin teams for the next 3 days, so they may recover from their C-rank missions and enjoy their fellow classmates' company? She asked. The Hokage smiled at the request. Normally that would be an issue, but since I wouldn't really have to change any vacation times other than Team 7's, then your request is granted. I will inform Squad 10 of your suggestion and hope that you enjoy your time off, the Hokage said before Naruto and Kurenai bowed, leaving a trembling Akemi in their wake. Naruto turned a curious look on Kurenai as the two walked down the steps of the Hokage Tower. Kurenai? He asked with a hint of curiosity in his voice. Kurenai glanced down at him as they walked and she said, Yes, Naruto? Naruto looked around to see if anyone was close to them, and noticing no one was, What did you have planned for those 3 days? He asked. Kurenai's face spread into a small grin. Something Naruto had learned meant she had something rather devious planned. One thing he had quickly realized about Kurenai was that she was almost as devious as he could be, something he learned to fear with her greater experience. At the same time, he noticed that she also had a look in her eyes that was reminiscent of when she had been picking out his clothes when he first met her. Something he was pretty sure meant she had something a little more feminine in mind. You will just have to see, but can you find your team and tell them of our days off? She asked with a hint of a laugh behind her speech. Naruto nodded and turned a suspicious eye on Kurenai. You aren't going to turn this into some prank, are you? He asked. Kurenai merely giggled and looked at him with a gleam in her eye. Maybe not, Naruto. All I'll say is tell your team to bring swimsuits, she said as she disappeared into a shunshin, off to alert her team of their days off. He presumed as Naruto sighed. I have a bad feeling I am going to get pounded for being a pervert with Kurenai's idea of relaxation, he thought to himself as he shivered and headed downstairs to get his checks. Scene break. Naruto walked out of the Hokage Tower, a huge smile on his face as he counted the bills now stacked into his gamachan. Zabuza had been an A-rank missing nin with an according bounty close to 300,000 ryu. The mission had been an A-rank, almost another 300,000 ryu, and he had 3 weeks' worth of his stipend to pick up, all totaled, and he had come away from the bank 630,000 ryu richer than he had been this morning. Thinking about his money, he remembered that he owed Takashi money for Kurenai's sword, and he needed a pair of swim shorts as he had only swam in his boxers before. With this in mind, Naruto set out to Takashi's shop. He hummed slightly as he walked down the slowly filling streets with a small smile on his face. He was rather eager to see his friends again. He had told Shikamaru about his training, which means Chuji overheard some of it but kept quiet about it, to which Shikamaru had simply said, troublesome blondes and their overactive imaginations. But it was said with such laughter behind his voice that Naruto had simply given the boy a one-armed hug and whispered thank you to him. Shikamaru was quickly becoming a brother figure he didn't even know he had wanted. Chuji was a good friend, though a little odd because of his eating habits. Naruto liked him because the guy was so happy all the time. But he knew not to piss off Chuji. A pissed-off Chuji scared Naruto some, much like an extremely calm Shika scared him. He was especially happy to have these two as friends, and the fact that their families welcomed him with open arms was an additional plus. Yoshino and Hamaka doted on him much like their own children, though it was obvious they didn't take it to the same extreme as when they doted upon their own children. Initially, Naruto had been a little jealous of his friends for their moms, but Naruto had quickly released that jealousy before it could corrupt his friendships. Shika and Chuji knew nothing of it, and Naruto intended to keep it that way since he now simply enjoyed being doted on every once in a while he watched what a happy family was like, never having been able to see one up close. That's what I want, Naruto thought to himself as his small smile brightened. A happy family who loves each other. Even if I don't understand love, I think I am getting close to it with the help of Shika, Chuji, and their families. He felt a warm feeling in his chest as he thought of himself, older with longer locks and a jounin vest next to a faceless woman as blonde-haired, no-color-eyed children ran around a backyard. He closed his eyes and stopped walking as he let the feeling engulf him. Like a warm blanket of comfort, Naruto's normally guarded face turned into one of serene bliss as he imagined the children running all over the place, jumping around before finally settling down in his and the woman's lap, looking tired as they curled up and fell asleep on top of his legs. Yes, definitely that, he thought as he lingered in his own little world for a few moments before being thrust back into reality as he opened his eyes and noticed a few stairs, the picture of serenity having been interrupted by the villagers. Naruto forced his smile to remain on his face as he continued down the street he had noticed he was on, the same street that Takashi's shop was. He was glad that after he paid Takashi, he could simply ninja jump to his house to get ready for his day of relaxation. Naruto sped up slightly when he saw Takashi's door and quickly stepped into the shop, hearing the door slam behind him and tinkle with the sound of chimes to alert Takashi that someone was in here. He breathed a small sigh of relief and let a small smile spread across his face as he looked over to where he heard Takashi working in the back. "Hey Takashi-san," Naruto said as he raised his voice to get the man's attention. Naruto watched for a few more moments before Takashi's hulking body could be seen walking out of the back. Takashi's face was a bit dirty from his work, but a smile brightened up his visage as he looked at Naruto. "Naruto-san, good to see you again. You have your first payment ready?" he asked, assuming that it was for that reason he had come here since he was late on his payment. Naruto nodded. "Even better, Takashi-san. I have the rest for you," Naruto said as he smiled and Takashi approached him. "Are you sure that you can pay the rest? I don't want you trying to pay me back too fast and not being able to eat anymore," Takashi said, a critical eye and a concerned tone of voice showing his demeanor. Naruto felt a warm feeling spreading in his chest as his smile spread wider and nodded. "My team got a A-rank mission and I got the payment for a missing nin, so I have plenty of money." "See," he said as he pulled out his gamachan, literally overflowing with money, and he still had more in his pocket. "An A-rank," Takashi said, surprised as he eyed the money in Naruto's wallet. "Yeah, it was supposed to be a C-rank, but it got upgraded when we ran across these C-rank missing nins from Mizugakure, then upgraded again when we met the demon of the mist Momochi Zabuza, also from Mizugakure. It was so damn hard to fight that guy," Naruto said loudly. Takashi looked at Naruto, pure surprise in his face. Nah, I'm even in the bingo book for Kumogakure, though they lied about me killing Zabuza-san," he said as his eyebrows furrowed. Now, Takashi was holding onto the counter to avoid passing out. "Momochi Zabuza?" Takashi muttered. Naruto looked up and nodded. "Bingo book?" Takashi said. Again, Naruto nodded. Takashi sighed. "Well, would you mind filling me in?" he asked. "I knew you had a mission thanks to Kurenai-san, but I didn't know this," he said. Naruto nodded and he began to talk with his friend as he moved down the aisles looking for a pair of swim trunks, all the while regaling his tales to his friend. Scene break. About a half hour later, Naruto had Takashi sitting in a chair from the stuff he had accomplished since he had seen him in almost a month. Naruto had paid the man and bought a pair of swim trunks, completely ready to relax. He had simply smiled at Takashi as he went to leave. "See you later, Takashi-san. I think I should go get my team informed of the change in leave," he said. Takashi nodded and wished the boy a good day as he opened the door, only to knock into a woman and fall on his butt. "Ow! You would think I could have sensed someone that close," Naruto muttered to himself as he looked up to see who he had run into. "Naruto," Sakura said as she stood in the doorway, Ino standing next to her and a furiously blushing Hyuga Hinata standing behind them. Naruto looked over to who he had run into and saw Kurenai rubbing her bruised leg slightly. Naruto instantly dashed upwards and stood next to Kurenai, offering his hand as he said, "Sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going. Are you okay, Kurenai-sensei?" Naruto paused to keep up the ruse that he didn't have any connection to Kurenai. Kurenai's wine-red eyes flashed at him, noticing how he had paused, and a look passed between the two that was missed by the three genin behind Kurenai as she simply said, "It is all right, Naruto-san, but please watch where you are walking from now on," in her normal tone of voice, something that was a bit colder than what she normally spoke with Naruto. Naruto simply chuckled slightly, his icy mask staying away while he rubbed the back of his head. "I'm sorry," he said again. He turned his eyes to the three genin with a question burning in them. "So, what are you doing here?" he asked curiously as Kurenai settled herself on her feet once more. The three girls blushed a deep red as Kurenai's eyes gained a gleam. Naruto was sure he was going to regret. That is a secret, Naruto-san. Please go inform the rest of the teams to meet at Training Ground 7 in 2 hours. Kurenai said as he ushered him outside and the three girls inside. Naruto taking stock of the only one he hadn't seen since the academy, Hinata. Her hair was a dark blue that was in a Haim-style haircut with chin-length strands of hair that framed her fair skin. She wears an oversized cream-colored hooded jacket with the symbol for the Land of Fire on the upper right and left sleeves while fur covered the cuffs and hem. Her pants were a dark blue while her feet had the normal blue shinobi sandals. The most obvious fact of her were her pupilless white eyes which held a hint of lavender. If someone looked close enough, he noticed that she was incredibly weird, as he would often put it in the academy, as she was always red in the face when he looked at her, something he was confused about until recently, and could see her growing redder and redder as he locked eyes with her. He smiled slightly as he looked at the three genin before the door was closed in his face. Naruto sighed. Troublesome women, he said, mimicking his friend Shika, before he turned around and began to hop towards his house by way of the shop's roofs. Scene break. Naruto landed at his house and walked inside, ignoring the filth and new brands of graffiti on his walls, something he was beginning to like as many of the people were using orange to make it stand out more. He got inside and stripped out of his ninja clothing, leaving nothing on as he quickly tore the tags off of his new swim trunks and slipped them on his waist, his physique much more appealing to his eyes as he looked down at his body. He smiled, his appreciation for Chuji, Shika, their families, and Kurenai never more present on his face than right then. But he decided he wasn't going to make Kurenai angry. He shuddered by being late and quickly threw on a shirt before grabbing his one beach towel and heading back out to get his sensei. Naruto locked the door behind him as he turned around and closed his eyes, sending out his sensor ability to find his sensei. Let's see, he is not near the training grounds. The Uchiha sector is clear except for team. He's not in the merchant sector, nor near the hot springs. Duh. He's at his house, Naruto thought as he sweat dropped, sweeping through the more residential sector of the city. Ah, there he is. Let's go get him and see if he is going to force the team along. With that settled, Naruto began hopping towards his sensei's house. As he traveled, he began to think of what to tell Kakashi so he wasn't late. Kurenai detested lateness and Naruto wasn't going to risk her anger just because of his sensei's habits. After about 5 minutes of jumping, Naruto smiled as a deviously foxy glint in his eyes gleamed. Soon after, Naruto had arrived at Kakashi's place and knocked on the door. Naruto waited for a few moments before the door opened, revealing Kakashi in his normal jounin attire and mask, his orange book not visible. Naruto looked up at his sensei. Kakashi-sensei, he said, his cold voice slightly warmer than normal. Kakashi's single eye widened slightly, but he looked at Naruto with a lazy look. Yes, Naruto? He asked. Something inside him hoped the boy was going to ask for his help. Hokage says that we are to get an extra day off to spend with the rest of our classmates, Naruto said, causing Kakashi to simply stare at him. Kurenai-sensei wishes for all of us to meet at the training ground 7 in about an hour and a half, he said, causing Kakashi's eye to raise. I see. Well, that is all well and good, but what does me have to do with you spending time with your classmates? He asked, his tone a bit curious. Naruto sweat dropped. Nothing, I suppose, sensei, he replied. Kakashi nodded. Okay then, since there is no reason for me being there, I don't think I will go. Thanks for the information though, Naruto, he said before starting to close the door. Naruto sighed. I guess Sasuke isn't coming either. You know how he is. Ah well, guess this perfect opportunity for team bonding is going to go down the drain, Naruto said as he grinned while turning away so Kakashi couldn't see that. On second thought, I think I will go gather Sasuke-kun and meet you at the training grounds, Kakashi said quickly to keep Naruto from dashing away. Naruto's grin widened. Kurenai-sensei said to bring swim trunks. He offered to the jounin, who nodded at Naruto's now smiling face, and that if you are late, she will cast a Genjutsu on you about a naked guy. Someone named Guy? Naruto said as he cocked his head to the side. having remembered how Kurenai had laughed at Kakashi's weakness when he had asked about them. Naruto assumed his threat worked as Kakashi paled before closing the door in his face. Naruto chuckled as he turned to Shika's house. "Now, time for Shika's game," he said as he leapt off. Scene break. Naruto moved his last piece on the shogi board. "Game," he said. Shikamaru looked at the board. "Troublesome blonde," he said as he scoffed lightly. Then he smiled at Naruto. "Good game," he said as he shook his friend's hand. Naruto looked at the time and said, "Did Asuma-sensei and Chuji get your message?" he asked. Shikamaru nodded. He had sent messenger birds to the two about the meeting and the two had agreed to be there through responses. "Then we should get going, we don't want to be late," he said as he shivered. Shikamaru smiled lightly. "Yeah. Wouldn't want Kurenai-sensei ringing you out in your next training session, huh?" he said. Naruto shook his head emphatically as Shikamaru laid down. "But I don't think I am going to go," he said, causing Naruto to look at him with surprised and slightly curious eyes. "It would be too troublesome." Shikamaru rolled over onto his side. Naruto gaped at his friend before a devious idea flashed across his mind. "Oh, I think you are going to go, Shika," he said, causing Shikamaru to roll over to look at Naruto. "'Cause if you don't go, then I am going to tell Yoshino-san what you actually do during personal training." He smiled, causing Shikamaru to pale. "You wouldn't," Shikamaru said. Naruto grinned foxily, a look that clearly said, "Try me," written on his face. Shikamaru looked at his friend for a few more moments before seeing Naruto's mouth open and he sighed in defeat. "Fine, troublesome blonde," he said as he got up and went into his clan house to grab his own pair of swim trunks. Naruto smiled at him as he re-emerged from his clan home, a towel and some sunscreen in his hands as the two began to jump towards the training grounds. Scene break. Shikamaru and Naruto landed in Training Ground 7 with about 5 minutes to spare. Naruto sighed in relief as he looked up at the men standing in the training ground. Kakashi was wearing a pair of swim trunks with some sandals, a blue shirt with his face mask and his Hitai 8 over his Sharingan eye. Sasuke was wearing black trunks with his traditional blue shirt with the Uchiha fan on the back. Chuji had on some blue trunks and a blue shirt with pictures of different foods on them. Asuma had on a pair of black trunks with smoke wisps on it. His shirt was white and he had his cigarette in his mouth as usual. None of them seemed armed and Naruto cracked a small smile as he looked over at the two remaining people from his graduating class, Inuzuka Kiba and Aburame Shino. The other two people on Kurenai's team and some effective fighters if what Kurenai had told Naruto was true. She hadn't done anything but praise them, but that had allowed Naruto to glean a little information about the two. Kiba had spiky brown hair, some red fang markings on his cheeks, marking him of the Inuzuka clan, slitted black eyes. He was wearing a plain brown shirt with his clan symbol on it, and some trunks that were dark brown as well with pictures of ferocious dogs on them. Shino had bushy dark brown hair which was held back by his Hitai 8. Naruto could barely see anything of Shino, since the boy had worn his black sunglasses, sea green high jacket with the collar turned up to hide part of his face. The guy had clothing on every piece of his body, covering it, and he was not wearing swim trunks. Naruto was a little surprised but waved it off. Naruto finally noticed that Shikamaru was wearing some dark gray swim trunks along with a white shirt with Konoha's symbol on the front. Naruto looked down at himself and smiled. His shirt was black with his Uzumaki swirl in orange on the front. His new swim trunks were black with orange strips down the side, one of the coolest swim trunks he could have ever asked for. "Yo, Asuma-sensei, Chuji, Kakashi-sensei," Naruto said as he walked up to the group. Each of the group nodded back to him. "Hey Ashino-san, Kiba, how have you been?" he asked, drawing a smile from Kiba, a long-time pranking buddy but nothing more, and a nod from Shino. "Hey Naruto, you actually look decent for once." Kiba roared with laughter as Akamaru, Kiba's Nin dog, came out from behind Kiba. He was a small white puppy that had a bushy appearance. Akamaru barked in happiness as he wagged his tail. Naruto chuckled and leaned down, patting Akamaru. "Hey there Akamaru, how's your pet coming along in potty training?" he asked, causing Kiba to sputter and Akamaru to bark loudly. The rest of the group chuckled as they looked at the interactions between the two genin. Shikamaru had moved closer to Chuji. Suddenly, Naruto stiffened and he looked over at the edge of the clearing, his body language indicating he was coiled like a spring, bringing the rest of the group to be on guard. Naruto slowly lifted his hand from Akamaru and placed it next to him in preparation for a hand seal when the girls' voices burst from the foliage and all of the girls came to the training ground, wearing their normal attire. Naruto's eyes narrowed as Kakashi's did. Asuma blinked before relaxing and the rest of the group relaxed except Naruto. Once the group of girls got closer, Naruto finally relaxed his sensor ability, confirming the girls were here and not a genjutsu that he had just sensed. "Why are we all in swim trunks and you girls are in regular clothes?" Kiba asked. The girls simply smiled coyly, except for Hinata who blushed a deep red, something Naruto looked at oddly. Now dog boy, no ruining the surprise," Ino said from her place next to Sakura. Naruto could see Sakura and Ino wanted to run over to Sasuke, but Kurenai seemed to have them stuck in place. He smiled slightly, no one but Kurenai catching it. "Well, I think we should get going so we have the most time today," Kurenai said as she turned and began to walk into the woods away from the clearing, Naruto and the girls following immediately after, while the rest of the guys followed lazily. Scene break. Naruto sped up and approached Kurenai. Keeping his voice low, he whispered, "Why are you all wearing genjutsu?" Kurenai merely flashed him a devious smirk that had an odd phenomenon occurring within him. His body flushed and he could feel his blood rushing somewhere downstairs as he walked. He just allowed the girls to overtake him again before beginning to walk. He was curious about his reaction to Kurenai's look. He stewed in his own thoughts for a little while longer, wondering why he felt such a way when he noticed that the girls had stopped moving inside a clearing just up ahead. He pushed his thought to the side as he emerged into the slightly bright clearing, blinking the sun away as he beheld the large lake with accompanying waterfall ahead of him. The edge of the clearing filled with lush grass which gently sloped down into sand, eventually reaching crystal blue sparkling water. Naruto's eyes filled with a childlike delight as he looked at the lake, his mind jumping from thought to thought as to what to do as he felt the rest of the group enter the clearing and all stand, a bit dumbstruck to the beauty of the place as Kurenai's wine-red eyes twinkled with mirth. Naruto didn't waste any time, wahoo, and was suddenly in the lake, his shirt fluttering in the wind as he jumped as far in as he could on the lake, far enough for him to make a splash and submerge himself before resurfacing and treading water. His blue eyes bright with excitement as he smiled at the rest of the group, all of whom were now laughing except Sasuke. He kept his smile as he splashed the water a bit. "Come on in guys, the water is great," he yelled as he dived under the water, enjoying it fully. Naruto rose back up only to get splashed with water as Kiba jumped into the pool, followed surprisingly by Chuji. Shikamaru, Asuma, Kakashi, and Sasuke had all set up towels and were laying in the sun. Shino was gathering bugs, and the girls were now smirking evilly, making Naruto's sense tingle. "Oh shit, I sense a prank coming," he thought as he turned to the girls. "Oh boys," Ino said sing-songly, causing all of the men to look over at the four girls. Only Naruto had the sense to be prepared for something. Kurenai's smirk had Asuma's eyes widened, something Naruto caught before he heard, "Kai!" and the girls were enveloped in a burst of smoke. When it cleared, the boys all had differing reactions, but all for the same reason. The girls now stood, all in their own glory, in swimsuits that would cause any man to stop and stare. Hinata's was the most modest. It was a lavender one-piece that hugged her body well, showcasing the budding C-cup breasts that she had hidden under her oversized coat. It had a frilly skirt down near her thighs which blocked the V of her legs. Her face was as red as a tomato as she looked nervously from her teammates to Kurenai, not having the courage to face Naruto's gaze. Sakura was next, another one-piece bathing suit, but this one was a green color. It hugged her body as well, showcasing her very small bust but doing nothing to hide the V of her own legs. She was blushing rather red while staring at Sasuke. Ino was wearing a purple two-piece with two orange flowers blooming on her mid-B-cup chest with the thorns disappearing into the V of her legs. Just like Sakura, she had nothing blocking her waist. But it was undeniably Kurenai that had most of the males in the clearing staring. Her full and lush body was enticing to stare at with her clothes on. With such little concealing her skin, she was the object of even more intense stares. Her reddish-orange two-piece was tied up near her neck, showcasing her full D-cup bordering DD-cup breasts. On her hips, you could see the outline of a red bikini bottom, but it was blocked by an orange shawl, much like Naruto's own, which was tied around her waist and draped over her right leg while leaving a nice portion of her toned left leg out for view. Chuji stared and stared for a few moments, his eyes never leaving Ino's form before he was suddenly causing bubbles in the lake, a slight reddish puddle near where his head was. Kiba, who hadn't looked away from his teammate, suddenly flew back and under the waterfall as a massive nosebleed launched him into blessed unconscious bliss. Shino had fallen over on his back while his leg twitched spasmodically. Shikamaru looked at the girls for a moment, before turning over and apparently going to sleep, only Naruto seeing the drop of blood come from his nose as he passed out. Sasuke looked at the women for a few moments longer than the rest before he simply closed his eyes and laid his head back, seemingly unfazed by the revelation, something that Sakura didn't fail to notice. Asuma had stuffed some tissues up his nose to keep himself from fainting as his eyes roved Kurenai's toned body, though you could see he appreciated Hinata's cup size. Kakashi, Naruto noticed, had simply pulled his headband up and activated his Sharingan eye, blazing the sight of those 4 kunoichi in his brain before he laid back on his towel. Whether he passed out or simply went to sleep, Naruto couldn't tell. Naruto himself looked at each of the girls, though he couldn't help but almost pass up Sakura. His gaze widened at Hinata's cup size, something he found very attractive, even if he didn't understand it, how her creamy skin showed a healthy level of prepubescent fat but also concealed more muscles than any female present other than Kurenai could boast about. Then he passed Sakura, she not taking notice of how he had almost ignored her, his gaze settling on Ino, his eyes taking in every form and curve, how her slightly tanned skin covered a thin layer of fat and muscles on her body, the color of her swimsuit, and comparing things with his Oiroke no Jutsu before his eyes locked on Kurenai's body. He instantly looked at her eyes, which were focused on Asuma-sensei's, a fact Naruto noted with interest but dismissed a little after. He followed the curve of her face down her neck, to where her luscious breasts bulged from her body, firm and supple enough to remain high on her body, no sagging to be shown. The pink things he had seen before when he first met her, something he still didn't know what it was, covered by the patches of cloth that were her bathing suit. He felt his blood rush downward again, feeling slightly light-headed, but his eyes continued their trek of her body as his body reacted to pictures he had never known. His eyes picked her toned stomach apart, seeing the healthy layer of fat combined with streamlined muscles that allowed her the superior flexibility that Naruto had encountered while fighting her. He followed the slope of her stomach as it raised slightly under her breasts to gently slope down into her waistline, something Naruto, for some reason unknown to him, wanted to see more of and cursed that piece of clothing that covered her right leg. Naruto looked down at his own swim trunks, that same phenomenon as the day he met Kurenai happening as he observed her body. He cocked his head to the side, wondering why where he urinated from had grown hard and pulsed as if it was some angry monster bent on captivating and subjugating its prey. He looked up again, as he heard movement from the beach, seeing Kurenai take a few steps forward, the piece of orange cloth slipping and sliding, offering tantalizing views of her toned legs and the V of her pelvis as she walked while not quite giving the whole image. Asuma suddenly hit the ground, unconscious as Kurenai giggled. Naruto had a flash when Kurenai giggled, his eyes suddenly seeing her as naked as he had the day of his meeting her. His body shivered again and he could feel his member harden even more. He looked down, irritated at his own body as he looked up at Kurenai and the girls. He put on a brave smirk. Well, it seems the rest of the guys are perverts, but you have to do better than that to knock me down, ladies, he yelled as he smiled at them. I'm no pervert. Hinata poked her fingers together while Ino and Sakura scoffed. Kurenai smiled slightly. Ino suddenly gained a dangerous glint in her eyes, something Naruto missed as he attempted to tear his eyes off Kurenai and understand his own body's actions. She stepped forward, swaying her hips as she reached the edge of the water. She smirked, much like Kurenai had, which brought Naruto's attention to her. As she looked at him and fluttered her eyelids rapidly, "Really, Naruto-kun?" she asked. "Are you sure my body isn't worth you passing out like the pervert you are?" she asked seductively as she leaned forward and pushed her breasts together by putting her hands on her knees. Naruto's eye twitched as Sakura gaped and Hinata looked at Ino with a furious blush. Hidden deep in her eyes was a glare, and Kurenai seemed surprised. Naruto's eye then glazed over as he looked at Ino's body. Definitely the most appealing to Naruto, with how her body wasn't quite so curvy as Hinata's but more alike with that of Kurenai's own curves. "Not really," he said, his voice holding an undertone only Kurenai caught, even though all the guys were starting to come to their senses. "Besides Kurenai's own body, yours pales in comparison," he completed, his eyes glazed as he looked at the four women, though he was obviously mainly looking at Kurenai. One of Kurenai's own hands came up to her cheeks as she stifled a laugh at Ino's obviously angry and dumbstruck expression. She snuck a look over at Sakura and Hinata. Hinata was looking at Naruto with a bit of shock. Though she was blushing like normal, Sakura was almost frothing at the mouth. Kurenai chuckled so lightly only she herself heard it as she looked back at Naruto. Though she was surprised at his words, they did ring true. No prepubescent girl could compete with her fully formed figure that most grown women had trouble matching. Naruto's eyes unglazed as Ino let out a furious roar. "Naruto!" she screamed, and Naruto's eyes locked onto her own. His eyes confused as to why he had said such a thing when he saw Ino running into the water, the splashing bringing all of the guys from their stupors as Naruto's own widened and he said, "Oh shit!" Ino launched herself into the air and only Naruto's reflexes saved him as he channeled chakra to his feet and jumped from where he was onto the beach front, leaving Ino to land in the water with a screech of anger. Naruto looked behind himself, having landed on one knee with his other hand fisted in the sand to soften his landing. His chest heaved once as he sighed in relief. Ino resurfaced, spluttering water as she locked eyes with Naruto. The anger within her orbs made Naruto feel a sliver of fear before he noticed she was now sporting some pink across her cheeks while she stared at him. He cocked his head to the side in confusion as he turned to the other girls, noticing the guys now watching him as well, to see what was going on, only to notice that Hinata had fainted with a blissful expression on her face as Sakura stared at his body, as if she couldn't believe anything that had happened in the last 5 minutes. It was Kurenai's own response that had Naruto blushing slightly, his cheeks being dusted with a light red as he noticed she licked her lips, making him shiver once again. His limp member, having softened at Ino's rage, hardening slightly but nowhere near as hard as before. Kurenai's eyes roved Naruto's body. He was, in one word, perfect. His previously scrawny body had been toned and shaped by Kurenai and the food he had eaten into this masterpiece of a male specimen. His face had lost all baby fat and angled slightly, giving him a more mature look than before. His shoulders and arms were slim, not much muscle being shown but obviously there as he flexed them under the small layer of fat that coated his body. His chest was well formed, the previously sticking out ribs not being able to be seen through his muscles. His stomach was an 8-pack because of the small amount of fat he had previously, combined with the intense stretching and exercises he underwent to tone himself. It was his legs, though, that caught almost everyone by surprise. The two extensions of the blonde seemed to be made of steel as his muscles flexed and moved while he shifted from his position, not an ounce of fat having accumulated on them. His back was slightly sculpted but much more like his arms and shoulders. All in all, Naruto's body seemed streamlined, the perfect runner's body and the envy of every male sitting in the water or shade looking at him as the female's eyes were instantly drawn to him. Naruto blushed from all of the attention as he stood and rubbed his neck in embarrassment as he looked over to Ino. "Sorry, Ino-chan. I don't know what came over me," he said, Ino merely nodding with a bit of drool from her mouth. "How about I take you out to apologize?" he asked innocently, thinking that would be the best way to make amends between the two. Chuji's eyes narrowed, but no one saw it. Ino's eyes snapped to his, her gaze disturbing the blonde as she moved from the water and smirked at him, that same shiver running down his spine as he looked at her. "Okay, Naruto-kun. Pick me up tomorrow at 8 and it's a date," she said as she giggled at his expression, the dumbfounded look of one being caught in something he hadn't meant. "Let's get this party started," she yelled as she broke the spell that had been cast on the lake. The guys now moving towards the girls as Kurenai reached into a bag she had and pulled out some beach games and balls. Naruto stood, shocked at the fact he had just asked Ino on a date without realizing it as the rest of the group moved. "A date?" he thought to himself. "How the hell do I get into these situations?" he asked himself as he shook his head, deciding to simply go with the flow for now and think about it later. Hinata had been shaken awake by Kiba, who had been staring at her breasts most of the time. Shino had resumed his bug activities, explaining with his bugs how he couldn't enter the water. Chuji had walked out of the water with a glance at Ino before blushing, something that had Ino smirking. Kakashi and Asuma simply remained on their towels, as did Sasuke, but Naruto went and kicked Shikamaru awake before threatening him into playing beach volleyball with the rest of the awake group. The game was quickly set up. The teams divided and the game began quickly, each of the genin and the one jounin smiling and laughing as they enjoyed a day of peace and serenity that was hard to come by in their world of death and misery. Naruto and the other males of the group were finding it hard to hit the ball whenever Kurenai or Hinata, and to a lesser extent Ino, would move towards or hit the ball. The way their breasts would jiggle with each step they took, combined with how prominently they were displayed when they would push their arms together in an attempt to knock the ball, led to the men's rational side failing them more and more often as the game progressed. Naruto knew not why he was drawn to Kurenai's and Ino's body, but he knew it was wrong to stare and exerted every ounce of willpower to avoid such acts. Luckily, he succeeded, mostly. However, Naruto's prankster side quickly came to light with his huge act of controlling himself. It didn't help that the two male jounin and his stick in the mud teammate had offended him in different ways. Thus, his prankster side quietly whispered the plan into his mind, causing Naruto to almost jump up in exclamation at the deviousness of the plan, if it wasn't so close to something he had already done. With a quick, devious smile at Kurenai, Naruto spiked the ball, causing Kurenai to block it and spiral it all the way towards where Asuma, Kakashi, and Sasuke were laying. Kurenai watched with a small smile as the rest of the group looked at the ball, before hearing, "Katsu." As Naruto smiled widely, Kakashi, Asuma, and Sasuke were suddenly covered in rainbow paint as they all sputtered from the exploding bleach ball, something that had been replaced with an exploding paintball. Kakashi, Asuma, and Sasuke all shot up and looked down at each other, the rest of the group stifling their giggles and chuckles as the three stared in horror at each other before turning and glaring at Naruto, who simply smiled cheekily and said, "You shouldn't be so bland, my comrades." He giggled, causing the whole group around him to giggle. "This is the beach. There are plenty of colors to paint with," he said as he fell onto his back, roaring with laughter. The group around him bursting into laughter at the pathetic attempts to glare at Naruto, though the multicolor ensemble on their bodies. Kurenai remained standing as she giggled at the male's misfortune. Ino wound up right next to Naruto on the ground as she giggled. Hinata giggled behind her hand, her head resting on Kiba's shaking shoulder as she attempted to remain standing. Shino simply stared at the group, his shoulders shaking slightly, indicating his amusement. Chuji and Shikamaru were clutching their sides. Even Shikamaru's lazy nature had been forgotten at Naruto's prank. Sakura alone was managing to hold her giggles in her body, but her rapidly shaking chest and shoulders did nothing to hide her amusement. "Dobe, you will regret that," Sasuke said darkly. "Naruto-kun, I don't think that was very nice," Kakashi said, his eyes smile, for once, anything but friendly as his hand moved to remove his headband. Asuma smirked. "How about I teach you something about how sharp wind is, and Naruto?" he said as he cracked his knuckles and reached for pockets his swim trunks had. Naruto responded between laughs. It was, "Haha, funny, ha 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 ha." "To me," he said as he gasped breaths out at the men. With a roar, the three multicolored men dashed forward, intent on beating the blonde genin into a pulp, before they blinked as Naruto said, "Hey look, it's the peacocks trying to impress you ladies," he said, using an odd piece of knowledge one of his clones had picked up from somewhere. The girls all began giggling anew as the men grew redder. The guys dashed past the pack and appeared next to Naruto, their weapons and ideas of humiliation fully in swing before Naruto smirked. "Gotcha," he said before bursting into smoke, leaving the three men pissed as the rest of the group began to laugh anew, many of them holding their hurting sides. "Dobe/Naruto." The three men growled out before dashing back towards Konoha, intent on harming the blonde as Naruto had jumped from his hiding place and sprinted away, the laughter of their fellow comrades ringing in their ears as they disappeared into the foliage. As soon as they were gone, Kurenai turned to the lake. "Good. Going Naruto," she said as she smiled merrily at his prank. The other genin looked out into the water as Naruto appeared, chuckling while he walked out of the water. "They need to lighten up," he said cheekily as the group finally calmed down and finished their game of beach volleyball. When do you think they will realize they were tricked twice? Naruto asked as he knocked the ball into the ground for the game point. Kurenai smirked. Right about now, she said as she heard 3 screams of rage echo across the village. The group burst into giggles again before deciding to pick up and head home. Smiles and relaxed guards indicating how much fun Kurenai's idea had been. Scene break. Naruto plopped onto his lumpy mattress as he sighed heavily, his slightly wet hair dampening his pillow as he relaxed from his hot shower after his day of relaxation with Kurenai and his fellow classmates. He had thoroughly enjoyed the time he spent with them and was even able to keep his mask off in front of them, though he mainly attributed that to Shikamaru and Kurenai. He smiled as he thought of Kurenai's suggestion and the subsequent outing. The happiest time of his life was probably the past day he had spent. Having gotten over the deaths he had dealt in his mission, he was capable of enjoying the day off with little holding him back, something he had needed more than he thought he had. He realized that he would never like killing, but he would do it as part of his job or to protect. An admirable goal that he thought would help him rationalize each kill and allow him some semblance of peace of mind. Finally, he thought about the inadvertent date he had with Ino the next night. She had given him her address and told him not to be late, but he was confused on what he was to do. He had always asked Sakura on a date, but now he suddenly finds himself on a date with her best friend? To top it all off, Ino's body had caused a similar reaction within him as Kurenai's did, and he was wondering what connection the two might have. He couldn't fathom what the hell was happening, so he did what he usually did when he didn't understand something. He pushed it to the side and hoped for the best. He would wear one of the dress shirts and pants his Gigi had bought him long ago and would take her to a restaurant, probably Ichiraku's since he hadn't been in a while, and simply try to enjoy the night, though he couldn't help but wonder, what would dating Kurenai be like? He thought to himself before dismissing the thought. She was so much older than him she wouldn't even consider dating him, much less the fact she was also his teacher. He sighed dejectedly. Besides, I don't like her like that. He thought to himself, but I don't like Ino like that either. So, why does this have to be so confusing? He grunted in frustration as he turned over onto his side, intent on getting some sleep and trying to escape these odd thoughts and reactions. When he closed his eyes, his mind flashed through scenes repeatedly, viewing his past few days in a sort of slideshow, as he drifted closer and closer to that borderland between reality and illusion. His final thought before he slipped into blessed unconsciousness was of Kurenai's body, exactly as he had seen it on the first day they had met. Her body framed by black hair and gleaming in the sunlight as it reflected the water she had been bathing in.